Good morning, Copenhagen.
Good morning! And thank you very much for coming here today. It's a pleasure having you here, and I just want to say welcome. And I'm actually going to talk about coffee. And when I was told that it was about magic, I reflected a bit about what is it with magic and coffee. And we actually found this one. And if you look at this, you see that coffee comes into the stomach. And you know, I think this is when the coffee comes in, and then if we think of what comes out, yeah, maybe some have the feeling that energy comes out, but I think others have the feeling in the morning to this is the what happens, and then you need to go to the toilet. I think there are many things when you say magic and coffee. And I simply had to close the case and said, this is too complex for me to go further in this direction. So I just want to say that I have been in this business for almost the last 20-25 years. And for me, the real magic when it comes to coffee is that when I came to Copenhagen back in the early 90s, coffee was a black liquid that I used heavily during my studies at university. And it was a black liquid that was a traded commodity. And if we see today, coffee is a specialty drink, is a specialty product that I even sometimes think that maybe it has come too far, but what people can say about a cup of coffee today, there are no limits. So this is what we are basically gonna walk around in today. Can everybody hear? Just as a start, I want to say you have had the chance to taste two different coffees. And for me, coffee is not, you know, we all know that coffee is grown all over the world, and coffee is probably tastes different depending on where it's grown. But basically, we can divide the coffee taste, the coffee flavors into 4 groups. And what I want to show you today is that these 4 groups of tastes in coffee will help you to look at a shelf with coffee and decide, okay, what do I like and what do I prefer? And actually, if you tasted both the coffees that we served this morning, then you already tasted 2 very distinct flavors and tastes of coffee. Did you all taste 2? Okay, so these 2 coffees, one is a Kenyan and one is a Brazilian. What is more to say about them is that it's what we call single estate coffees. It means that it's a very transparent coffee. We know exactly where it comes from, and on top of that, it's freshly roasted, freshly ground, and freshly brewed. So these 2 very distinct flavors. Could you all taste the difference? That was very significant, wasn't it? they are actually representing 2 of the 4 tastes that we see in the world. If you look, I need to, if you maybe it's a bit, there's a long way up here for some of you, but this is a world map. And if you look at this world map, you can see that coffee is grown in a quite narrow area around equator all around the world. It has not always been like that. Actually, the coffee originates from the region down here in Ethiopia. And actually, it's not more than 500 years ago. The coffee was spread by the French to South America and by the Dutch to Southern Asia. And nowadays, coffee, I don't know if you know it, but coffee is the 2nd biggest traded commodity in the world after crude oil. So it's not just a specialty thing. It is a very, very widely traded commodity. Now, if we look at this map, you have already tasted one of the 4 distinct flavors, and that is the Brazil. If we drink pure Brazilian coffee, we will have a very nutty and very dry flavor. And if you meet that flavor, you can be sure that it is a Brazilian. We don't see that characteristic from coffees anywhere else in the world. That's the first. The second is all other American coffees from Peru in the south to Mexico in the north. If you have one of those coffee, they tend to be very light-bodied. Sometimes people explain it, say, this is a good coffee, but it's a bit thin. So what I want to say to you is that if you want a very strong and heavy coffee, don't go for El Salvadorian coffee or Mexican coffee. Then you should go for something else. But what is very nice about these American coffees is that they are really, really delicate, and they have this chocolatey aftertaste. And the more you learn about the taste and flavors of coffee, the more you tend to like these Central Americans, and also, well, my personal favorite are for sure Colombian coffees. The third taste is Africa. And like many other things, Africa is, maybe it's a bit too simple to say Africa has a coffee flavor. But you have tasted a Kenyan today, and what you really, if you compare to the Brazilian you tasted, that is a lot of fruitiness, a lot of acidity, and that is a common thing with all African coffees. So if you want to go for a coffee that is not in the middle of the road, then choose an African coffee. Fruitiness, acidity, many flavors on top of each other, and then you should certainly drink an African coffee. I have to say, this is the fast version of go through the flavors of coffee. The last distinct taste is the Southeast Asia, and that is actually from India to New Guinea. What we have here is very often quite spicy coffees, sometimes a bit earthy, woody, very, very powerful, full-bodied coffees. So if you want a very strong coffee, then but maybe you don't like the fruitiness, then this is certainly what you should go for. That was the very, very fast crash course, and now we need to have a sip of coffee. Coffee is actually a cherry on a tree. And when this cherry is fully mature, it's red, and then we pick the coffee. After we pick the coffee, then you take away the skin. And I know that some of you can probably not see what's on this, so I'll just try to visualize it. In this cherry, there are 2 coffee beans. We all know these coffee beans, and there is actually 2 coffee beans in 1 cherry. And the process of making coffee is about getting these 2 coffee beans out of the skin, get them dried, and get them sorted. That is how we make coffee. And now I'm going to send 2 what do you call them? I'm going to send some green beans around now, and these green beans is actually what is the second biggest traded product in the world. This is raw coffee. This is how coffee looks when we get it to the roastery here in Denmark. Most coffees in the world, they are picked by hand. The only places that we pick coffee by machine is in countries like Brazil, a few places in Africa, but normally coffee is a product that is picked by hand. And you can probably imagine if you have ever tried to pick strawberries or any other product, how many coffee cherries you need to pick just to get 1 cup of coffee. That is something that I personally have this feeling that no matter how much we pay for the coffee, it's really not enough. When the coffee is here, then coffee is going to be roasted. The traditional way of roasting coffee is what we call drum roasting. Actually, it's a drum that turns around, and underneath that drum we have some kind of heating, and then we roast the coffee. It takes about 12 to 14 minutes to roast a batch of coffee. But if you would like to taste it, to try it at home, it's also possible. You buy 250 grams of these green beans. You turn up your oven full 250 degrees, and then you put in the beans. After 30 to 40 minutes, you will have a roasted coffee and a very, very smoky kitchen. If you're going to try this at home, please make sure that you have a very, very well have access to open windows, and otherwise it's you're gonna have the neighbors gonna call the fire department, and it's a mess. It's a mess. What happens when we roast it? That the small green beans, they become much larger. They grow almost 20 to 25% in size. They also lose about 20% in weight. And depending on where you are in the world and how you're going to brew the coffee, that is what decides how we're going to roast the coffee, light or dark. On top of that, we have learned in what we call the specialty business over the last years that there are many ways to roast a coffee, and if you want to dive more into this, then you can take a training course in profile roasting after you have tried roasting in your oven at home. Profile roasting is a bit more difficult to do in your oven at home, but then you can $10,000 and you have a pretty good thing to roast your coffee at home. Yes, so now the coffee is brown, and now the coffee is how we how we know it, and then you just need to grind it and brew it the way you prefer it. Yes, like I said, actually magic is what has happened to coffee in the last 20-25 years. And for me, when I look, actually now I have to say I'm a bit proud, but normally I don't talk to me about myself in that way. But I actually see I came into the first coffee business in '93, and actually, like I said earlier, coffee back then was a black liquid. It was not very tasty, but we didn't think about it that it could be different. But actually, what started back in the early '90s is what we could say the development of specialty coffee. And today we have gone through so many phases that it is really a different product today. But still, we also see the old product exist, the black liquid, but there are so many new things. My personal story is that I came to study social sciences in Copenhagen back in '93, and to make sure that I could go to Café Rust every Wednesday, and I needed some money, so I got a job at a small coffee shop at Blågårdsplads called Floras Kaffebar. At Floras Kaffebar back then, they were the first ones to serve coffee on French press, small French press, and you could choose between 5 different coffees. And honestly, if I look at those coffees today, they were really awful. But that was a Mexican, that was a Colombian, that was a Kenyan and an Ethiopian. It was so delicious, and you know, many people in Copenhagen, they went to Floras to have a really good coffee. And what you also could have was a café au lait. And that café au lait was so hot that the milk even made when you drank it, you had some skin on top of your lip, and you had to get that away when you have been drinking your café au lait. So, but that's how we started. Together with Lasse and Tina, who started that coffee shop back in '90. A few years later, I was just really struck by this coffee thing, and together with them, I decided we're gonna make the first real new coffee house in Denmark. We were very much inspired by something called Starbucks in Seattle, and there was a lot of things going on over there. I spent 6 months traveling around South America to study coffee in Brazil and Colombia and Venezuela and Bolivia, and they went to US, and when we all came back in the summer of '97, we sat down and we started to work on a business plan for Suleima Kaffehus. Suleima Kaffehus was going to be the new hotspot in Copenhagen, and that we were going to roast our own coffee in-house. We were going to serve something that we learned in the US. We didn't learn it in Italy, fordi when we asked about this in Italy, they didn't know what it was, but we were going to serve cafe latte. And in February '98, we opened something next door here, actually, called Amokka. And Amokka was that name was actually found by one of my friends after we have been discussing Suleima Kaffehus for some months. It was killed, and you know, we were looking for names and nothing really could beat Suleima Kaffehus, but one day Amaka. And it was just a really, really funny thing when we heard Amaka first time. Why haven't we thought of that before? But Amaka was our first real new coffee house, and with Amaka came words like cafe latte. I think Amaka was the first place in Copenhagen that ever used or cafe latte on the menu. Another word we had something employed called a barista. A barista, and you know, we had several journalists came, what is it about? What is a barista? And you know, sometimes when I think back today, you know, now it's even something that's you know, it's almost a title. You can be a barista. I just have to let you know, there is no school that is authorizing baristas. So you can all call yourself baristas. Till 2005, and actually in 2005, you know, Amaka went crazy with a lot of. Actually, it went away from what we, the founders, wanted it to be. We wanted to make coffee, but it turned out to be so many other things. And in 2005, we were just puking. And we're very, very tired of all these. Well, we were becoming more an interior design company, so we decided to sell it and started on a new, and that's how we founded Contra back in 2005. There are many other things that could be said in this history, but one thing that is that I feel that we need to mention is that much of the development of the coffee during the last 20 years has been driven by these coffee championships, and especially in the period 2000 to 2005. The whole startup of these championships was very much something that was going on in Scandinavia. And actually in 1999, in the summer, I went together with a couple of other coffee people from Copenhagen. We went to Oslo and to the first nordiske mesterskaber I baristakunst. And that was actually the first ever championship in making coffee. And that was really something that made a lot happen over the next 10 years. I would say after 2008 and until now, this is not really what has made a lot new. If we look at what happened today, what is really where the new things is happening now is in the process of making coffee. I'm talking about from the picking to the dry green bean. That is where we see many, many new things today. Actually, I could say a few things more, but time has run out. We just want to say that we would like you to bring home this very good experience of coffee. So you're all more than welcome to bring home a bag of whole beans Mexican coffee. That is actually a Danish guy whose his goal is to produce the best coffee in Mexico, and you can go and try at home to see how far he has gone, how far he has reached so far, and it's a very good. It's a good friend of ours who's actually making some really good things in Mexico. If you want us to grind it, then we'll help you.
Otherwise, thank you so much.